And leading up to the top of the hour, we talked about the new biography out about the late, great Mel Allen, The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story by Curt Smith. Before we introduce Curt, I just want to take you back for a minute to a 1950s broadcast of a New York Yankees game against the Washington Senators. Mel Allen in his prime, and we're just going to give you a little slice of his play-by-play.
So there are runners on first and second. One out, and the batter, Jim Lemon. Lemon hitting .224, 15 for 67. Norm Zouchin on deck. A walk and a single, one out. Bobby Shantz to his stretch, the pitch. Swung on, there's the fly ball into short right. Here comes Bauer digging, it may drop, and there goes Richardson making a great running catch with his back to the plate. There is Pearson rounding third, heading home, but then a throw in to Kubek, tag second, double play, and the side's retired. As Bobby Richardson made a sensational running catch with his back to the plate in right field. Albie Pearson thought it was a sure base hit and was running all the way.
Well, that's just a slice of the late, great Mel Allen. And with that, we welcome former speechwriter for President Reagan and the first President Bush. I told you earlier he wrote the definitive book on baseball broadcasting, The Voices of the Game, and now he has a new book out, The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story, written by Curt Smith. Curt, good afternoon.
Well, Dan, good afternoon, and great to be with you.
Curt, you just heard The Voice. What a voice he had.
The greatest voice, Dan, without question, in the history, it seems to me, of sportscasting. Variety magazine in 1955 had a poll of the 25 most identifiable voices in the world. President Eisenhower made the list, Winston Churchill, Frank Sinatra, and Mel Allen, the only broadcaster from America, let alone sportscaster. A florist must have decorated that voice. A columnist once said that if Mel Allen sold fish, he would make you think as if Puccini wrote the score.
Curt, relate to our audience what Mel Allen was like, particularly in the middle 20th century, because he did every big sporting event, it seemed.
Well, Dan, he was the embodiment of sport in America. That's not hyperbolic. It's the way it was. And any American male who is a baby boomer born in the 1940s through 60s understands exactly what I mean. He did everything there was to do. He did 21 World Series, 24 All-Star games, each a record, 14 Rose Bowls at the time when the college game trumped the pros. He did 3,000 movie-tone newsreels. 1 in 2 Americans saw him in a movie theater each week. 4,000 Yankee games. He broadcast for CBS, NBC, Mutual, and ABC. He had primetime network series. He was the first sportscaster ever profiled on Edward Murrow's Person to Person in 1957. He was, without question, the marquee sportscaster in America. And since the events that he did were the quintessence of what it was to be an American in the 50s, for example, the afternoon World Series, a young child's Thanksgiving, Christmas, and 4th of July, when you heard that voice, you knew that the event mattered. By definition, any event mattered that Mel Allen did.
Now, it wasn't necessarily by design that he got into the broadcast business. He was just in New York on a trip, right?
That's very true. Mel lucked into it, except I could say luck really is not the design because talent was. He was born in 1930, Dan, as you know, in rural Alabama, an Orthodox Jew whose parents had a dry cleaning place that was boycotted by the Ku Klux Klan. Mel surmounted that, as he did anything else, with enormous talent. He was precocious. He gave new definition to the term. 15, high school degree. At age 19, his BA. 23 years old, he graduates with his law degree from the University of Alabama. That was 1936. He decided on a lark to take a one-week vacation to New York. That vacation lasted for the next and final 60 years of his life. He was offered a job, and in addition, by CBS Radio in January 1937. Very torn because he loved Alabama. He was very close to his parents, and he wanted to practice law. But CBS talked him into coming to Manhattan. They said, you try it for 2 months. If you don't like it, you go home. He never went home. He went instead to America.
How did he end up broadcasting the Yankees games?
Well, he was enormously successful for his first 2 years with CBS Radio, and of course that's in Manhattan, and the Yankees were in the Bronx. So word of his talent spread. He did the big band announcements. He introduced the Kate Smith Show. He introduced for the first time ever on network radio Perry Como and Joe Stafford. He interrupted network programming to announce the Hindenburg crash in 1937. Howard Hughes went around the world in 1938. Mel Allen got an exclusive interview and did the parade down the Avenue of the Canyons with Howard Hughes. That year, he did his first All-Star game. Next year, 39, he announced the opening of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. That was the year that he did the Yankees and the Giants with Arch McDonald. Then McDonald went to Washington in 1940 at 27. Mel Allen became voice of the most famous team already, the New York Yankees, in the world.
It's just amazing. Now, after the war, he had a choice between broadcasting for the New York Giants solely or the New York Yankees. What happened?
Well, luck again was in his corner because before the war, he was very close with Horace Stoneham, the owner of the Giants, and he had given Stoneham a verbal commitment that he would broadcast for the Giants at the Polo Grounds when the war ended. In 1945, Mel on furlough went drinking with Horace Stoneham at Toots Shores, and they started talking. And Mel said, I got a problem here because I'd like to broadcast for both teams, but I gave you my moral commitment. Stoneham said, Mel, you don't have a problem, and the reason is because I do. Stoneham said, I cannot seem to get a station. I can't seem to get a sponsor. So as of this moment, you are freed from your commitment to broadcast the Yankees. And that, as they say, is a turn in the road, a fork to be conjured with, because had Stoneham been more fortunate, Mel Allen may never have broadcast after the war for the Yankees, and as a result would never have become the voice, as he did, as we remember, of the great fall classic, the World Series itself.
Now, weren't the Yankees the first team after the war to broadcast the away games live?
Well, they were in 46 on television and on radio as well. The Dodgers in 1939 had begun radio in New York. They were the first team in New York to begin radio. That forced the Yankees and the Giants to follow suit. And after the war, the Yankees not simply went 154 games live, home and away. They also began television. Dumont gave $75,000 in TV rights. So Mel Allen then, in 46, two historic firsts, home and away live coverage of every game and television as well.
Talking with Curt Smith, he has written the book The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story, published by the Alliance Press, available at bookstores and also online. We'll get back to Curt in just a moment, talking with author Curt Smith, who has written the book The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story. Curt, here's Mel Allen riding high, and he is the voice, and then everything comes crashing down in 1964. And people today, in fact, we got some calls when they heard you were going to be on the program. People today still ask, why did the Yankees fire Mel Allen?
Well, this is the most mysterious and controversial broadcast firing in sports history. It remains so today, and that was 43 years ago. Maury Allen, the longtime columnist of the New York Post, no relation to Mel, told me that of all the sports and figures that he's covered over the years, Dan, this has engendered the most mail, the most phone calls, the most emails. Why could the Yankees do this? How can you fire the best sportscaster in America? And this book, The Voice, for the first time explains why. What happened? After 4 decades of smear and innuendo and rumor, 1964, Mel is all of 51 years old. 51. At his peak of fame as an institution. He's doing the Yankees, Movietone, NBC. He's having a frenetic schedule. He does ads and commercials around the country. He does philanthropic groups. He never said no to a charity. And he was childless and unmarried. His career was his life. As his mother said, he was married to the New York Yankees. The point being that to keep going, how do you keep going at 51? Well, in his case, you seek a doctor. His doctor was Max Jacobson, Dr. Feelgood was his nickname. He was Eddie Fisher and Truman's Capote doctor, also John F. Kennedy's doctor. And he specialized in amphetamines, speed. Now, this is not to say that Mel Allen took amphetamines. No one knows. Jacobson is dead. Mel is dead. Jacobson destroyed all of his records, including Mel's and JFK's, after having his medical license revoked. The point is, Jacobson was a quack, a butcher. His own nurse in my book quoted as that he would minister to as many as 30 patients a day. But Mel was seduced by the fact that this man was a celebrity doctor. And as he said in 1963, boy, those pills, they really work. What happened was this. To keep going, he would take pills from Jacobson, a pill in the morning to get up, pill at night to go to sleep. And I talked to many of his colleagues who who relate the same stereotype, the same image, spacey, aired out, didn't know I was there. And what I believe happened, and I try to connect the dots, is that in essence something happened, not to the voice, but to the mental coherence, if you would. I went back and listened to more than 100 hours of audio play-by-play, and you hear things in the early 60s, just before he was fired, that you did not hear a decade earlier, 25 to 30 seconds of dead air. Never happened in Mel's fame when he was an impeccable announcer. You hear him repeat himself, forget what he was doing, misstate. And what I believe happened is that basically he did nothing, but rather was done unto him. That Jacobson totally betrayed the trust that a patient has in his doctor. This is not what many people thought. People said, well, he drank a lot. He didn't. They said he'd had many strokes or major strokes. He didn't. So I believe what happened, and I detail this and connect the dots, as I said, is that by and large, incrementally, he did not have the same sharpness, the same facility, and I ascribe it to, in effect, Max Jacobson being more of a Hannibal Lecter, if you would, than Marcus Welby. He misprescribed, misprovided, mocked the patient-doctor axis.
Did Mel Allen ever recover from being fired by the Yankees?
Not inwardly. As I say, he mended, but he never healed. Red Barber said it best. He was his colleague with the Yankees. He gave the Yankees his life, and they broke his heart. What the Yankees could have done so easily in 1964 is to say, you know, we may have a little medical problem here. Why don't you take a sabbatical? Why don't you reduce your travel schedule? They owed him at least that, given what Allen had given to the Yankees. Instead, Nan, they treated him like a lowlife, like a side dish you declined to order. Ralph Houck, the general manager, said this, a verbatim quote, "We see no reason to embarrass Mel by telling the reason." Now, what is that supposed to mean? And so the Yankees held no press conference, issued no press release. As Mel told me very many times, when people are left to believe the worst, they did.
Now
they did. And it was as if Sports Illustrated said that Mel Allen had leprosy. And what happened was a terrible next decade in which, for all intents and purposes, he was blacklisted, blackballed, could not get a network job, and for all intents and purposes, almost ceased to exist as far as the average American was concerned.
Now, Curt, there was talk that one of the owners of the Yankees, Dan Topping, was still seething over Mel Allen turning Mickey Mantle over to a quack
in
1960.
The quack was Max Jacobson.
It was?
Max Jacobson, Dr. Feelgood. This is what started in the estrangement, if you would, in 1961, not simply between Topping and Mel, but Ralph Houck, who was then the Yankee manager, and who in 1964, as general manager, fired Mel. But that, again, really is where the name of Max Jacobson first intrudes into the relationship between Mel and the Yankee brass.
And then Mel makes this tremendous resurrection with This Week in Baseball. Talk about that.
It's an amazing story. There's no parallel to Allen's life. This is a man who had all, lost all, and incredibly came back. A life in 3 acts, rise, ruin, and recovery. By the early 70s, even friends will tell you that he had lost the incentive to live because, again, his career was his life. His career was gone. Then in 1976, Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, is looking for someone to host a baseball highlight series. The National Football League had 3 or 4. Baseball had none. They said, who can give us instant credibility? The name came, Mel Allen. So Allen took an audio tape, didn't do well because he hadn't done anything in so long. But as all of us know, 76, 77, he begins as the host of This Week in Baseball. He hosted it through his death in 1996. It became the highest-rated syndicated television series in sports history because of Allen. He didn't simply do the show. He was the show. No one could have done what he did with the magnificence of the voice, playing language like Jascha Heifetz did a violin, the nuance, the intonation, the hello there, everybody, the how about that. It was a spectacular resurrection.
Curt, how do you think Mel Allen was viewed by his peers?
Oh, I think with great affection, enormous respect, and friendship, and a great difference. I mentioned Red Barber. Barber played the country gentleman, the soft-spoken country corn on air. Off air, he was cold, no sense of humor, enormously disliked by peers. Allen, what you saw on the air was what you got. The real McCoy. Great authenticity, enormous valor, a sense of right and wrong, great ethical underpinnings, enormously respectful and courteous, enormously liked by his peers. One of the most popular broadcasters. Not envied because of his popularity, but respected because of it.
In the book, you have a picture of Mel Allen shaking hands with President Ronald Reagan at a reception.
Yes.
I couldn't help but think the remarkable lives both men led, and also that they used to be the co-anchors of the Rose Bowl parade on NBC.
That's exactly the case. 1958-59. And Reagan was, this is ABC, and he was narrating, hosting the Rose Bowl parade, and Mel was going to be doing, of course, the Rose Bowl game later that afternoon. So Reagan asked them, geez, will you help me do the parade, and then we'll take a limousine and you can go to the game. And Allen did it. I guess you would call that a day of giants, would you not?
You sure would. The name of the book, The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story by Curt Smith. Curt, I've enjoyed all your books, and this is a great read. It's all in the book. I urge people to buy it and read it. And Curt, thank you very much for spending some time with us this afternoon.
You're very kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. Curt Smith, The Voice, Mel Allen's Untold Story. We'll be back.